You wake up strapped down to a chair, your own blood covering your hands and dripping down onto the floor. Your face is plastered across television stacked to your right, partially blocked by torture equipment. To your left, a ventilator and IV stand, and straight ahead of you, a shadowy figure that asks you questions about numbers that refuse to leave your vision. You thought this was supposed to be an FPS game, but it's not. This is Call of Duty Black Ops. Now, yes, it is a first-person shooter game. That's sort of the whole genre. But to call the original Call of Duty Black Ops just an FPS game is doing it a disservice. This game has one of the most thrilling, psychologically intriguing, and twisted stories of any Call of Duty ever. And we're going to go over each mission, talking about the story, what makes it so great, and hints that give us an insight into that story in real time as we play through it. Our story starts off in Cuba, finding the character we play as, Mason, in a bar along with his team, Woods and Bowman. Your mission is to find and kill Fidel Castro, but first you have to reach his compound. The plan is to team up with rebels that are going to cause a distraction by attacking the airfield at the same time, allowing your team to infiltrate and secure the kill before the rebels will assist you with your extraction. Sadly, some soldiers barge in and make that a bit more difficult. You and your team get into a firefight right off the bat, but manage to escape shortly after to prepare for the mission that follows. You zipline down into the compound, taking out a guard silently and waiting for the rebels to launch their attack. As soon as they do, your team springs into action and fights their way into Castro's building. You breach the door to his room and with a bullet-time slow-mo event, place a bullet straight through his head. Or so it seems, but more on that later. Things get hairy, but the rebels show up just in time, and you're able to make it to the extraction plane. But with vehicles blocking the end of the runway, the plane doesn't have enough space to take off, and you know what you have to do. You jump out of the plane and rush over to an AA gun to clear the way for your team, sacrificing yourself in the process. And right after the plane takes off, you're pulled from the AA gun, knocked out, and captured. The shadowy man asks what happened after that, and what you remember is that Castro wasn't actually killed. It was a double, and after capturing you, he offers you as a gift to a Russian man named Dragovich, who seemingly is a high-ranking Soviet officer and one Castro's allied with. That's how you end up in Vorkuta, a Russian work prison. You tell the shadowy man that a soldier named Viktor Reznov is the only reason that you escaped. After staging a fight with Reznov, you kill a guard with a rock, and that one step leads to a full sprint. You fight your way through the prison, starting a full-on riot in the process, and even that's conservative. It's a hell of a fight. But you and Reznov eventually make it to some motorcycles that you use to make it outside. Hopping onto a Soviet truck, you two drive alongside a train that is bound far, far away. Reznov urges you to jump, but after you do, he doesn't follow. This wasn't a plan to get everybody out of Vorkuta. This was a plan to get you out. At least, that's how you remember it. See, hints are something this game is so great at dropping and is an art in itself, one that most every piece of media, games included, tend to either make too obvious or too difficult to ever find. One hint jumps into play right around this time, of all places, the main menu. While you sit scrolling over missions or options, the shadowy man talks to you or asks you questions, never letting you rest as if you're really in that interrogation chamber. One of the statements he says is, "There's only one riot ever reported at Vorkuta, and it ended peacefully after 3 days." So, is he lying to you? You remember so vividly the events, Reznov, Sergei, the year you spent in that hellhole. It can't be fake. The shadowy man is lying. He's probably a Russian himself. You can't trust him. But can you trust yourself? After escaping Vorkuta and being extracted, you're cleared for duty once more and introduced to your handler Hudson from the CIA. You're flown all the way to the Pentagon, shown the nerve center, and even introduced to the president. But you keep hearing those numbers. They won't go away, and the vision of killing the president right then and there won't leave your mind, but you snap out of it. It's not real. Now that moment right there, that vision is so important to the story later, but Not until the very end, so you'll have to stick around to figure out exactly why, and trust me, it's not what you expect. The president tasks you with finding Dragovich, stopping a Soyuz rocket from launching, and killing the scientists working on it. It's a dangerous mission, and almost instantly things go wrong when Weaver gets compromised and has his eye gouged out by Kravchenko for your team not surrendering themselves. Luckily, you're able to rescue him before worse happens, and despite the rocket itself making it off the ground, you're able to use a controllable prototype rocket launcher to stop it in its tracks, blowing the whole thing up right then and there. The mission was a success, but it doesn't seem like that's what the Shadowy Man is after, and he insists on knowing what the numbers are about. They don't really care about what's going on, what's gone on, even in the classified missions you're talking about. They already seem to know. It's the numbers they don't know about, but are they going to find out what they mean in time? They try to jog your memory some more, and suddenly you're back in Vietnam, flying in with Hudson and meeting up with Woods, whose unit is currently doing sabotage, propaganda, and POW rescue missions behind enemy lines. Yet none of that was your mission at the moment. Despite orders to make it to Hue City, you, Woods, and Hudson stayed behind. This base needed your help, otherwise it was going to be overrun, and none of you were about to let that happen. Despite the Viet Cong onslaught, you managed to fight them back enough to maneuver around and retake a strategic hill and reach the entrance to the base itself. Jumping onto the gunner's seat of a Jeep with a guided rocket launcher on the back, you're able to take out a number of T-55 tanks and hold out long enough for air support to arrive and send back the enemy into a full retreat. But remember, this was all just a side mission, a preview of what's to come. Bowman arrives by helicopter, and Hudson informs you that he needs to talk to the team about encountering Russians in Laos, since they've had word that a possible Russian defector might have vital information on their involvement in Vietnam. Your team ends up getting tasked with rescuing that defector, and that's where you get your mission back on track, by arriving in Hue City. The city is already in ruins by the time you get there, an absolute mess of rubble, bodies, and soldiers even shooting civilians for betraying them and cooperating with the Americans. It's a bloodbath, but regardless, you have a job to do. Fighting your way to the safe room, you eventually find the defector, and it's Reznov? How did he end up escaping again? How does he have vital information on the Russian involvement in Vietnam? How? Well, the questions will have to wait. You need to get him out of here first, and with the Viet Cong blocking off your extraction, you need to pierce through their lines, and it's not going to be easy. You call in air support, which, okay, let's be honest, a Huey sitting, building level, firing dual miniguns into a building is pretty fucking sick, okay? I'm just going to show us a little bit longer and shut up and just, hey, you guys enjoy. Okay, and with that out of the way, you manage to make it to the new extraction site, eventually having to use a boat to escape, taking your crew and Reznov with you. But something is becoming more and more noticeable. The numbers, the ones that you're being interrogated for, they seem to happen every time you see Reznov in your memories. Are they connected? Is he somehow the cause? But for now, we need to take a break from that, as our next mission isn't even ours at all. It plays out from the eyes of Hudson, your handler, who's accompanied by Weaver. After learning about Nova 6, a deadly bioweapon originally formulated by a German scientist at the end of World War II from the dossier that Reznov gave you, he's sent to interrogate Dr. Clark, a narcissistic prodigy that was hired by Dragovich. After some persuasion, he tells Hudson that Dragovich knows everything you know, plus more, that he doesn't like loose ends, is probably already on his way there, and most importantly, that he hasn't even dealt with him personally. Only the German Steiner, and that Clark was hired to help stabilize the volatile compounds within Nova 6. And it seems by the way he says it that he was successful.
I was hired to help stabilize certain volatile compounds.
Right after that, Dragovich's men find Hudson, Weaver, and Clark, and a firefight breaks out. Hudson tries to gain as much information out of Clark as they move towards the extraction point, asking questions like,
where is their base? Nam? Laos? Cambodia? It's home turf. The Ural Mountains.
And when Hudson asks, are there any rumors or whispers? Clark responds by saying that Steiner talked to Dragovich about numbers.
What kind of number?
The kind that their plan relies on.
Sadly, Clark doesn't make it out alive, but both Hudson and Weaver do, and we still learn some vital information from this mission, and it wasn't even our own mission. The numbers you're hearing might be the same numbers that Clark mentioned, and if so, then how do they connect to Dragovich? And do they connect to Reznov at all? If the numbers are what they need, then you can find out what they mean and stop them, right? Or is this all just a wild goose chase? Hudson told you that Clark was obsessed with numbers and paranoid. It's possible he didn't even tell the truth at all, but you're going to find out, whether you want to or not. We're now thrust back to 1945. Reznov told you during your time in Vorkuta that he'd met Dragovich and Kravchenko before. There was a German defector that had agreed to turn to the Russian side and assist them, and Dragovich made it clear that if anyone were to harm him, they'd be killed. Reznov knew something wasn't right and even said that he wanted to kill him, but he was a soldier, and after fighting his way to the defector, a German scientist called Steiner, he resisted and simply brought him back to Dragovich. Reznov's friend and fellow soldier Dmitri said something about the way Dragovich and Steiner talked like old friends was unsettling, and sadly, soon it would be much more than just that. Steiner told Dragovich about a ship carrying Nova 6, a bioweapon meant to be used on Moscow and Washington, D.C. to cripple the Germans' enemies, but they surrendered too soon for it to be used. Reznov's team finds the Nova 6 gas, but Dragovich sees an opportunity to test out the gas and get rid of a thorn in his side, and has Reznov's team, including Dmitri, forced into locked cells that are then flooded with Nova 6. Reznov watches his best friend Dmitri die a painful and agonizing death right in front of him, and he's about to be next. But right before that happens, the British Special Forces, who were also looking for the dangerous bioweapon, attack, blowing off the door to Reznov's cell, and with Dragovich and Steiner fleeing, now's Reznov's chance to escape. He fights through both Russian and British soldiers, planting a timed charge before escaping the ship, watching it all explode and sink down to a deep, deep grave. Sadly, that's how Reznov ends up in Vorkuta, for betraying his comrades, despite that being so far from the truth. As your memory of Reznov's words fade, the shadowy man asks if Reznov was with you after your last mission in Vietnam. You tell them that he was with you the whole time, and that you all moved north but were shot down while doing so. With your helicopter surrounded by Viet Cong and sinking fast, you pry on the door to get both you and Woods to safety. But right as you think you don't have the strength, from outside of the helicopter, Reznov helps pry open the door right as the numbers start ringing in your ears again. After clearing the immediate threat, you meet back up with Bowman and sneak around houses, eliminating Viet Cong and planting C4 to decimate their structures later. With the enemy caught off guard, you push the fight and eventually end up inside of Viet Cong caves, meeting back up with Reznov, who says he'll meet back up with you later, along with Swift, who swiftly gets taken out. Yeah, he's dead. You push on and eventually, alongside Reznov, find Kravchenko's hideout, but he's long gone. Maybe you can still find something that would give you a hint as to where he's gone, or information to bring back that might help. But you don't have the time. The whole place was rigged to explode. You barely make it out with your life. But after jumping onto the helicopter that Bowman and Woods are already inside, you manage to escape safely to fight another day. Back in the interrogation room, the shadowy man tells you that Reznov cannot be trusted. But you tell him he's your friend, and the shadowy man gets agitated and says forget Reznov and to focus, that the world is on the brink of war, that you've been brainwashed and the numbers are a broadcast, but you don't know who to believe. You're being tortured right now for information. Do you trust your own mind, or a shadowy man who won't even tell you who he is, trying to get information out of you by any means possible? You have to trust yourself over him, right? Right? Back to your memories of Vietnam, you got word from Hudson that the CIA downed a Soviet plane carrying Nova 6 gas in Laos. And since you were heading up the Mekong River in that direction anyways for Kravchenko's hideout, it only seemed right to make a pit stop. You, Woods, Bowman, and Reznov all take a gunboat up the river to advance with the rest of your forces towards the downed plane, but The Nova 6 is so important that it's not going to be an easy fight. You take out anti-aircraft guns, trucks, and even boats on your way up the river, disembarking to fight your way up the hill towards the downed aircraft, and you make it, but not before seeing Heinz helicopters flying off with some of its cargo. The dead crew, covered in chemical burns, tells you all you need to know to verify that this plane was in fact carrying Nova 6, but none of it's left. Only American weapons, which Bowman says has to be some kind of setup, but it is a bit strange nonetheless. You move to the front of the plane with your squad and fire down support for the rest of the American troops. That is, until a Heinz helicopter comes back, laying down fire on you and breaking the cockpit of the plane in half, sending your entire squad tumbling down the cliff injured and disoriented. You pull out your pistol, but with the numbers rushing in your head, you can't seem to pull the trigger, and the weapon is quickly kicked from your hand before both Dragovich and Kravchenko appear, leaving a boot in your face and your whole team captured. The Shadowy Man explains that your team was MIA in Laos, which made Hudson have to continue to look for the Nova 6 without you. The Shadowy Man says that's where Hudson learned about the numbers and the broadcasts, even saying that the Shadowy Man himself has been there. But if he's been there, then who is he? Who is the Shadowy Man? But right as we start to think those questions, we get snapped back by realizing that the numbers truly are real. They're not just a figment of our broken mind, which leaves another question. What happened to us? Without your team, Hudson pushed on and took Weaver to Yamantau to search for Nova 6 and Steiner, with the overwatch of an SR-71 Blackbird. The advanced UAV guides his team through the snowy landscape until the weather clears up and Hudson manages to disable multiple important relay components on his way down to Steiner's lab. When he reaches there, he can see a map of the US with strategic targets located all across, and seemingly Dragovich's plan is to release the Nova 6. Hudson can hear the numbers, or is that you hearing the numbers? It doesn't matter right now. As the building is set to explode, he needs to get out of there. Steiner knew they were coming, and he didn't plan on letting them go. Luckily, Hudson and his team react fast enough and are able to quickly fight their way out of the building, stealing a gun truck from enemy forces and narrowly escaping the complex with far less intel than they'd hoped for. You get ripped out of the memories and back to the interrogation chamber. The Shadowy Man explains that Dragovich has weaponized and deployed Nova 6 already, and that he has sleeper cells all over the country just waiting for the signal. That's what the numbers are. They're broadcast by Dragovich to communicate with the sleeper agents. But if you can hear them, does that mean you're one of them? The Shadowy Man tells you that Dragovich, that Steiner programmed you at Vorkuta, and that you can translate the codes for them, but that's just not true. You try to tell him that never happened, that Reznov never... But he isn't having it, and insists that they're on the brink of war and need to know where that broadcast station is. It's not a matter of if Nova 6 will be released, it's a matter of when. Suddenly, you're back at a POW camp after your team was captured. You recall hearing Bowman crying. He'd broken. You're retrieved from an underwater cage and forced to sit across from Bowman. But he just can't handle it anymore. And after talking back, a Russian brutally kills him, banging a pipe over and over against his head until he stills. Bowman's spot is quickly replaced with Woods, and the game starts. Russian roulette. Woods pulls the trigger first and is safe, but says the next one is it. Instead of pulling the trigger on yourself, you tell Woods where the tangos are behind him and pull the trigger on the closest soldier, stealing his gun and taking out a couple soldiers while Woods handles himself. The Russian that just killed Bowman flees, and you both give chase, taking out hordes of soldiers before you manage to catch up enough to get a clean shot on. The shots connect, and the Russian goes down. You then climb up a wall and are able to escape the cave. And right as you do, both of you spot a landed Heinz helicopter. After taking out the soldiers around it, you commandeer it for your own and go in search of Kravchenko's compound. It must be close. This mission was super fun, and being able to fly around and take out so many ground troops was an absolute blast, no pun intended. A shooting spree moment to break up this serious and incredibly well thought out story, was fun. You didn't need to think during this mission. You just held down the trigger, and those breaks are just as important as all the action. If you're constantly thinking and worrying and figuring out every little thing in the game, there's no time to sit back and relax and enjoy it. And this was that moment, and I loved it. After sustaining damage to the helicopter, you two land in a clearing not far from the compound and fight your way inside, opening a POW cell and retrieving Reznov, who says that he was brought there after he was captured at the river. And Reznov says that now is the time to kill Kravchenko, and that he must not escape, but that he must die. With what's left of your team reunited, you push deeper inside and are able to break into Kravchenko's room. But you're hit over the head and fall to the ground. Woods goes hand to hand with him, but Kravchenko's too strong and incapacitates him too. He turns his attention back to you, and before you have time to pull the trigger with your pistol, it's kicked out of your hand, his boot finding your face next. Right as you're about to pass out, Woods, who's regained consciousness, stabs Kravchenko in the side. But it's not over. Kravchenko pulls the pins on his grenade belt, and Woods is forced to push both him and Kravchenko through the window to avoid killing you too. Kravchenko is dead, but so is another member of your team, leaving just you and Reznov alive. Or so it seems. After that, you went rogue, or at least that's what the shadowy man says. You never saw it that way. You learned of Steiner's whereabouts on Rebirth Island. No, not that Rebirth Island, the original, and headed there to kill him. You had one of 3 on your list already dead, and you were aiming for a second. Arriving on the island as a stowaway, you sneak around, taking out Soviet troops to stay hidden and avoiding search helicopters. That is, until the CIA bursting, guns ablaze, and at that point stealths out the window. You need to beat them to Steiner and make sure he's dead. You just need to. You fight through the facility, eventually making it to Steiner's lab. You sneak up on him along with Reznov, and Reznov punches Steiner multiple times before shooting him in the head, killing him. At least, that's how you remember it.
Reznov killed him right in front of me.
See, there's a whole different view to this mission when you're put into the eyes of Hudson. Hudson was part of the CIA team that attacked Rebirth Island at the same time you were there. He even tried to contact you via the radio, but you never responded. Hudson, along with Weaver, fought through Nova 6 gas and made it to the same part of the lab that you and Reznov made it to. But they saw what you couldn't. Reznov wasn't in the room with you. He didn't shoot Steiner. He wasn't even there. It was just you. You shot Steiner. You almost shot Weaver before Hudson knocked you out. And everything's slowly getting pieced together as you realize that. Snapping back to the interrogation facility, another shadowy man tells the original that they have to go, that he tried, but it's too late. The shadowy man tells him to go, but that he knows he can get through to you, right before you see Hudson step into the room. Hudson was the shadowy figure all along, and Weaver was there too. They were the people interrogating you. You don't know whether it's the numbers, the betrayal, or the sheer disbelief, but as soon as Hudson unstraps one of your hands, you punch him and make your escape. Or at least you try to. Your head is spinning, numbers, memories, Reznov, all bouncing around inside your mind. You don't know what's real. You don't know if any of it is real. But once Hudson catches up to you and punches you, the clarity comes through. Back in Vorkuta, you were a test subject for Dragovich and Steiner. They tortured you, trained you to listen to the numbers and follow them obediently. At least they tried. See, Reznov was in Vorkuta with you, and the riot was real, but he never made it out. Reznov wasn't a friend, he was a manipulator. Using your broken state of mind, he managed to implant you with his desires, not just Dragovich's. He used you to get revenge on Steiner and Kravchenko, and wanted you to kill Dragovich too, all for what they had done to him. Remembering the reality of what's happened, you're finally able to break free of it. You listen to the numbers once more, and use what's meant to control you to steal information that can save not just you, but billions of people. You hear the numbers mention Rushalka. The remaining broadcasts will be from the Rushalka. The name sounds familiar, and that's because it is. A ship all the way back in the first mission, one that belonged to Fidel Castro and Cuba. That's the broadcast station. That's why they were allied. You tell Hudson you know where the broadcast station is, and both of you know exactly what has to be done. You fly along with Weaver and Hudson to the Rujalka, and the plan goes into motion. You attack the boat with a Huey and protect ground units as they advance, but after your helicopter takes too much damage, you're forced down onto the deck of the ship. You make it all the way into the lower levels, but with still no sign of a broadcast station, you're confused. That is, until you discover that there's more to this base than just the ship. Dragovich has built an entire underwater compound made to handle the broadcasts and coordination of an attack onto the US. Hudson calls in an airstrike onto the boat, but you tell him that you need to go down there and kill Dragovich. Hudson questions if you're still brainwashed, but when you quickly respond, does it matter? That seems to be good enough for him.
Get out of here, Weaver. We're gonna finish this.
You both scuba dive down there, leaving Weaver to evacuate. You start to push through to take the command center, but the airstrike is already commencing and it makes it much more difficult to reach it. But you're not going to let this mission fail. You find the number transmitter and shut it down right as an explosion flings you almost completely off the platform. You grab onto the edge and start to pull yourself up right as Dragovich appears. He walks out of the smoke, telling you that you could have been his finest agent while pointing a gun right at your head. Suddenly, Hudson shoots him, but Dragovich quickly turns to shoot at him back, leaving you free to grab him and pull him down with you, landing on a partially submerged catwalk. You fight with him, telling him that he tried to turn you against your own, even saying, which he responds, tried, before you submerge his head back into the water for the last time, holding it there until he goes limp. You leave the facility with Hudson as it all gets blown to Kingdom Come and manage to barely make it up to the surface in time. The military has already arrived and you've won. For now, at least. With Dragovich's last words echoing in your mind, the screen cuts to a woman saying numbers. The numbers you've been hearing the entire story. Now, that's where the story leaves off, but there's still a lot to talk about, especially the ending, so let's get into that now. What makes Call of Duty Black Ops such a good game is the mind games and the internal conflict of not knowing what's real and what's fake. And you know what both of those are major components of? Psychological thrillers. Call of Duty Black Ops has some incredible action scenes, shooting from helicopter gunships, launching guided missiles at tanks, blowing up foot soldiers with rockets. No one is going to try to say that's not the case, but I still argue that it isn't an FPS. It's firmly a psychological thriller. Almost every cutscene is about the interrogation and exposition. Now there are some action explosions in them, but not many. During the missions, you can hear the numbers near Reznov and hear how soldiers interact towards you when you talk to Reznov and he's not there. I don't think the main appeal of Black Ops 1's story is the shooting. Because, hear me out, if you took away all of the shooting from this game, you'd still have a solid game. You'd have a depthy story of a soldier who is fighting to find if they can trust their own mind, while also being the only one who can save the world and avoid a global conflict with the information that's trapped in there. This could easily be turned into a psychological thriller or even a psychological horror movie without any shooting, and I think it would be very well received. That said, if you take out the story, you end up with Black Ops 7, and come on, no one wants that. Another reason I think it's an amazing psychological thriller is the twists. Reznov, for example, he isn't a good guy, but he isn't really a bad guy either. He did use you for his own revenge, but may have stopped you from doing your original mission. Well, more on that later. Playing it again after so long for this video, I actually forgot exactly what happened, and was actually surprised by the twist that Reznov implanted his revenge on me, part the way through the Vorkuta brainwashing by Dragovich and Steiner. Reznov is basically an anti-hero within a story that isn't even about him, and it adds so much more depth having side characters that are so well thought out and integral to the story. Now, my final argument for why Call of Duty Black Ops is such a good psychological thriller doesn't have anything to do with any mission. There's no shooting, there's no action. It's in just a short cutscene that I left out at the very end of the game. See, that woman that was broadcasting the numbers, she was broadcasting them to you. The scene I left out was you listening to those numbers and responding by saying,
16, 1122, Texas.
Pictures of the president flash up on screen, and the last one, dated November 22nd, 1963, has you in it. You were there the day he was assassinated, with a 6.5mm bullet in Texas. The final twist in this perfect thriller is that you did kill the president.